So we started talking about conveyor belts and timing, and one of the big challenges with this coronavirus is that the timing of the entire factory system is set up on having workers spaced a certain amount of space apart, having a certain number of workers, and if all of a sudden those things get changed, all of a sudden your labor is not allowed to be as close together as they were, now these factories don't work. How serious
they'll still work.
Okay.
It's reduced capacity.
Okay.
Okay, like I was just looking at a picture the other day of one of the news groups had it inside a big meat fab. And I was thinking about, I take some people out of it. The plant will still run. It's just going to run slower. It just reduces the capacity. It doesn't turn it off. Let's say I had half the people in there. I can still run the plant. It's just going to run a whole lot slower.
People are sending me photos where in the grocery store, the meat is much lower. Is this a real problem, or is this just hype? Is this just people saw something?
There's some problems, and one of the problems is, the pigs are growing, and then when they're ready, they got to go. And there's been some really bad problems. They just had to euthanize some pigs and throw them away because they didn't have enough plant space. This brings up another thing about supply chains. All right, now let's look at it almost like nodes on a network. You can look at like data centers on a network or so, for electronically. And when I first started in the industry in the 70s, like in my state of Arizona, for example, in the 70s, we had two big plants, Swift and Grandin, and then we had four what we call medium-sized. The Swift plant back in the 70s did 1,200 cattle a day, and the medium-sized plant maybe did 400 a day, 350 a day. But about a third of our capacity was medium-sized plants. So let's say Swift went completely down, I would still have, over half my capacity. Now, if Swift just had slowed down, maybe I'd only lose 10% of my capacity. See, it's a more distributed supply chain. Now, but let's just say I have 3 plants in a network. I'll lose an entire plant because they got to close it to clean it. Then I'd lose a third of my supply. Okay, then I turn the plant back on, it runs slow. Maybe I'm losing, a fourth of my supply. You see, when you have the thing about a concentrated network, it's efficient. It's efficient, very cost efficient. Now, when it comes to animal welfare, big plants can do a good job on that. I've worked with them. Big is not bad. I want to be very clear. Big is not bad. Big's fragile. There's a big difference. Like just the other day, here in the state of Colorado, the internet went down. The whole internet went down for 10 minutes. I was on a conference call with my student thesis committee, and I'm going, oh man, what's wrong with my router? And I was pulling out the thing for rebooting the router. And then my student said, well, I'm down too. So then I didn't mess with the router. I don't like to do that. And it went back on. And then I was talking to another person I know, and it was off at her house. That was even further away. Then I talked to a lady in Denver, and hers had been down. And that's 50 miles from where I live.
So, there's something to be really said for big is because it has allowed Americans to have access to beef on a level that is amazing. Like we've been able to be at the top of the food chain.
This is the thing. Big can be very good. You set a big plant up right, they work really well. You can put really clean product out. We can have super good animal welfare in these big gigantic plants. But it's a more but it's not a robust supply chain. You break a node on the system. And you see, when the internet first started, it was totally distributed. Well, now I don't think things are as distributed. I mean, we just lost a big pile of internet completely down for 10 minutes. I was freaking out.
So what do you think is the answer? What do you think is the answer out of this? Because right now we do have a system where there's a lot of several big packers and very few medium to small. Do we get through this crisis just trying to keep them running at their capacity, or do we need to make bigger changes?
Run the plant slowly. The thing that's been the worst thing is they've had to kill pigs and throw them away. That's the worst thing. Absolutely the worst thing. Now because we only have real big plants, and we don't have very many what we used to call medium-sized plants. Then we have little tiny locker plants, like someone who raises a pig in their backyard. Well, there's no way they can take them. But that's cattle is easier to put them on hay and stuff. But
Have you ever seen the euthanization of pigs on this scale before? Is this unprecedented?
it's never happened before. Never happened before. I've been in the industry for 47 years. This is the first time this has happened. And the other thing you've got to look at when you have a network with large nodes on it, for anything, not just meat, power, electric power. In Canada, they had an ice storm that took out hundreds of the big Eiffel Tower electric transmission towers. The other thing about a big node on a network, whether it's a warehouse for dry goods, okay, what's dry goods? Dry goods is an old-fashioned term for everything you buy in a store that's not refrigerated, basically, or wet. You know, that's going to be electronics, clothes, everything else. Dry goods warehouse. I'd probably have a hard time running that on a generator. They don't have the people packed in it the same way a packing plant does. The infection rates in the large dry goods warehouses, that's been way lower. But what's happening now, the thing that may happen now, we got plants, half the people are infected. Are they going to get herd immunity? That's the $50 million question. And it takes a lot of people to, where you have to have a huge amount of people is cutting the meat up.
Are you concerned about meat shortages?
It's a shortage. It's going to be a shortage in the short term. But what it's showing is, I don't care if it's internet or it's meat. When you concentrate a network into a few large nodes, you make that network efficient, real low cost, but fragile. You distribute the network. It's more expensive. But when something breaks, it's more robust. And it's a trade-off. And I don't think it's just meat. Now there's a lot of other stuff. Let's take chips, for example. I've looked at that. What goes inside your phone? What goes inside this computer? There's one place that makes the best ones. There's only a few factories that make the heart of everything electronic. It's the same thing. Let's not just go after the meat industry. Big, efficient, can do really good product, whether it's chips or whether it's meat, but it's fragile. Okay, okay, let's talk about generic drug supply chains. Oh, this gets even worse, because I've looked into that. Common generic drugs, antibiotics, blood pressure pills, just common stuff. You've got a few plants in China that make the raw materials. Then they ship them to India to actually manufacture the pills. Now they do stockpile a few months of the raw materials. Now you can't stockpile pigs, but you can stockpile the raw materials. What happens to what do we do about antibiotics if we lose that supply chain? It's very efficient, but fragile. So don't just pick meat out for this.
Oh, that's very interesting, because meat is the only one that, as far as I can tell, that's really being focused on. It's the one that I'm super interested in.
But the heart of this computer, the heart of your phone, comes from a very, very narrow supply chain. You get sick, you need some antibiotics. It's coming from a very concentrated supply chain. You haven't seen it because it hasn't busted yet.